Hello and welcome to the Big Blue U YouTube channel, where we hope to always bring you intelligent discussion of your New York Football Giants. I'm your host, Ed Valentine, editor of Big Blue View. Please like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. All right, thought today that we would talk about week 2 of New York Giants OTAs. What I'm going to do today is give you sort of thoughts on 5 things that I'm thinking about, 5 things really that that I took away after the second week of Giants OTAs, with one more week to come, and then mandatory minicamp before the Giants break for the summer until training camp. All right, the first thing is that once again this week during OTAs on Thursday, when media had access, it looks like Brian Daboll, head coach Brian Daboll, is continuing to call plays during 7-on-7 and 11-on-11 periods. Daboll did that earlier in OTAs, admitted that he's pretty much done so all throughout the spring for the Giants. We expected Daboll, after the second year of his tenure, I've sort of been expecting Daboll, highly successful offensive coordinator with the Buffalo Bills and offensive coordinator at, I think, 3 other stops in his NFL career, plus at Alabama during a national championship season. We've been expecting Daboll to call the plays. And even though Daboll said on Thursday that there's a process, that no decision has officially been made, it is trending toward Daboll taking over play calling duties from offensive coordinator Mike Kafka. And really, that has to be the expected outcome here. Third season for Daboll as Giants head coach, coming off of a bad year. Whether he's on the hot seat or not is debatable, but there is pressure on Daboll to produce results. And the offense, for a myriad of reasons, from offensive line to quarterback play to injuries to lack of a dominant weapon on the outside at wide receiver, the offense, for a variety of reasons, has been a major disappointment, especially in 2023. And play calling, offensive structure, offensive scheme, that is Daboll's strength. So for him to take over play calling in 2023 would be no surprise at all, would probably be the best thing that Daboll could do. Obviously, it's not a good thing for Mike Kafka's career to have play calling taken away from him after 2 years. The Giants have sort of soothed Kafka a little bit with a raise and a promotion in title to assistant head coach, and they're doing some internal things to try and help him in his desire to eventually become an NFL head coach. But stripping away the play calling is something that doesn't help Kafka, but might be beneficial to the Giants, and is certainly understandable. One thing that I wonder with Daboll is we've talked a lot about the sideline histrionics. We've talked a lot about him yelling at assistant coaches, at position coaches, making it more difficult for assistant coaches to do their jobs during games and things of that nature. I wonder if Daboll focused on play calling is something that might lessen some of the emotional outbursts, simply because Daboll has to be focused on the offense and the next play and the next series and things like that. And the other thing that was critical here was that the Giants hired Shane Bowen as defensive coordinator after losing Wink Martindale. The hiring of Bowen is a guy who is an experienced defensive coordinator. He's called plays. He's run a defense before. So Daboll doesn't have to worry that his defense is in the hands of an inexperienced coordinator who he has to spend a lot of time overseeing. He can let Bowen do his job. Andre Patterson's on that defensive staff, terrific defensive line coach, decades of experience. Jerome Henderson, who was a finalist for the defensive coordinator job, is on that staff. So there's a lot of experience on that side of the ball. Daboll can focus on what he does best, which is coach offense. And that could benefit the Giants in a lot of different ways. All right, my second takeaway from the week is that we continued to see a little bit more from quarterback Daniel Jones, who is still 6.5 months out from surgery on his torn ACL. Jones, who was pretty defiant last week, said he wasn't exactly fired up about the Giants offseason flirtations with quarterbacks in the draft and all the time they spent studying quarterbacks. The fact that they tried to trade up in the draft to get Drake May, unsuccessfully, of course, and they eventually passed on quarterback at number 6, taking Malik Neighbors. But Jones, throughout OTAs, throughout the spring, has worked in 7-on-7 drills on a daily basis. That continued on Thursday, but what we saw on Thursday is something we hadn't seen last week when media was able to see practice, and in videos from prior OTA practices. We saw Jones moving both to his left and to his right, scrambling out of the pocket to make plays, to make throws. Obviously, this is not against a pass rush. This is using his internal clock and knowing when he needs to move. Jones wasn't moving full speed, but 6.5 months after surgery, just the fact that he's practicing regularly, the fact that we saw him move to his left and right, even if it wasn't, full speed movement, that's progress. That's a good sign. Jones has insisted that he'll be ready for training camp and for week 1. And at this point, I think what we saw Thursday, the movement that we saw Thursday, is another indication that he's on track to do exactly that. Third thing to discuss is the fact that we got a chance to hear from Giants assistant general manager Brandon Brown on Thursday. It's always informative, always interesting to listen to Brown, who Joe Shane brought to the Giants as his number 2 when Shane was hired as GM in 2022. Brown is a guy who's on the fast track to being a general manager of his own NFL team. Had 2 interviews for the job in Carolina this past offseason, had 2 interviews for the job with the Los Angeles Chargers this past offseason, didn't get either of those jobs, but the fact that he got second interviews for both positions shows that he did impress during his first interview, and that the league is interested in Brandon Brown. He's a 35-year-old guy. He's a fast riser. I think that somewhere down the road, he is going to run his own team, and that will come sooner rather than later, especially if the New York Giants experience some success in the next couple of years. So Brown just, he speaks very well. He explains things very well. One of the things that I always notice about Brandon Brown when he speaks is that he has an ability to make sure that everyone who touched a process, everyone who touched a decision like drafting Malik Neighbors or like drafting Tyler Nubin or making a trade or whatever it might be, he has an ability to make sure he gives credit to everyone in the organization who touched a given process. He's good at explaining how the Giants came to certain decisions, and that helps all of us understand what the Giants were thinking when they made certain decisions. I encourage you guys to to go back to look at videos of Brown, to look at video of his press conference on Giants.com. To if you haven't listened to it, if you haven't seen it, gives you a little bit more of an understanding of Brown, and it will give you some deeper understanding of why the Giants made some of the offseason decisions, both in free agency and the draft, that they made. All right, next up is I want to talk a little bit about the Giants' first two picks in the draft. First round pick Malik Neighbors and second round pick Tyler Nubin. Brown actually spoke about both players on Thursday, and I thought some of the things that he said were revealing as to the impact that both players can have on the Giants. Brown spoke a lot about the aura of Malik Neighbors. He spoke a lot about the big personality. He spoke a lot about how badly he wants to win, how badly he wants to be great, how badly he wants to take the best matchups. One of the Brown said he's got moxie, he's a dog. The cool kids call it aura. He wants to be at his best versus the best on the biggest platform, and he's going to let you know about it. He's got some attitude in him. So that we kind of knew about Neighbors, that he did have a little bit of an edge, that he did have a little bit of, I want to tell you when I do something good. One of the other things that Brown said regarding Neighbors that I found interesting was that Neighbors seems to be challenging his teammates to be better, challenging his teammates to do more. And that I find interesting from a young kid just coming in, 20 years old, number 6 overall pick, hasn't played in the NFL yet, but he's trying to push the group to be better. Another thing that I've noticed consistently in the photos and in the OTAs media's had access to, and is Neighbors and Daniel Jones spending a considerable amount of time together. I know that Neighbors made some remarks prior to the draft that were really, considered a shot at Daniel Jones, at the Giants quarterback situation. But Neighbors has to make the best of working with Daniel Jones, and it does seem as though they are trying to do that right now. It seems like they are spending a considerable amount of time together and trying to work through things. Brown also spoke about Tyler Nubin, and Joe Shane had said after the Giants drafted Nubin that Nubin was a culture changer at Minnesota. That and also when Shane mentioned the core players on the Giants defense who they had under contract for the next several years and wanted to build around, he mentioned Dexter Lawrence, he mentioned Bobby Okereke, he mentioned Tay Banks, he mentioned Kayvon Thibodeau, Brian Burns. But interestingly to me, he also put Tyler Nubin in that category. And one of the things that stuck out to me in Brown's discussing Nubin on Thursday was that he said he has the potential to be the alpha of alphas, a leader on that defense. The Giants have Bobby Okereke leading the front. They have Dexter Lawrence, but in the back end with Xavier McKinney now in Green Bay, Julian Love left for Seattle a couple of years ago. Obviously, they didn't bring Adoree Jackson, veteran cornerback, back to New York. They need a leader at the back of that defense. And I believe Nubin, the selection of Nubin, one of the reasons for that was that the Giants think that he can and will eventually, if not immediately, become the leader of that group in the secondary. Finally, I wanted to talk a little bit about the offensive line subject in a position that everybody who follows the Giants has interest in on an annual basis. Carmen Brasillo, new offensive line coach, spoke to media on Thursday as offensive position coaches all were available to speak to media. And of course, one of the topics of conversation was right tackle Evan Neal. And Brasillo seemed to make it pretty clear that Neal is going to get a full chance, however full chance is defined, full chance to grab the right tackle job, to show that the Giants selecting him in 2022 wasn't a mistake. The really revealing thing to me that Brasillo said was that one of the things that he has learned over the years as a coach is you don't judge players when they're young, and you don't judge players when they're injured. And the fact is, Neal is a young player who suffered some injuries in 2022, his rookie season, and played most of 2023 playing on an ankle injury that eventually required surgery, required him to be shut down before the end of the season. And I have been one who was critical of Jerry Reese, critical of the Giants years ago when Reese insisted, despite mounting evidence that he couldn't play the position, insisted that Eric Flowers remain at left tackle. And because Jerry had drafted him 10th overall to play that position. And you simply had the impression that Jerry wanted to be right. And I have said in the past that I don't want to see Joe Shane make the same mistake and simply put his marker down and say Evan Neal's a right tackle because I drafted him to play right tackle. Shane has said this offseason that he's gone back and looked at Neal's tape at Alabama in college, and that he doesn't believe he got the evaluation wrong, that he believes Evan Neal has the physical ability to be a tackle in the NFL. The Giants are bound and determined to give him one more opportunity. What I would love to know is how long is the leash? Right now, Neal is not practicing during the 11-on-11 periods. He is still rehabbing his ankle after off-season surgery. I would like to know if they don't see what they hope to see in training camp from Evan Neal, how quickly will they make that decision? If they go into the season with Evan Neal as the starting right tackle, and he has a bad game or two bad games, will they make a move? How short is the leash? How much patience will they have before they most likely move Jermaine Illuminor from left guard out to right tackle, a position where, honestly, Illuminor with the Las Vegas Raiders the last 2 years was a better right tackle than Evan Neal was with the New York Giants for the last 2 years. So you can make an argument that Illuminor is the best right tackle on the roster, but the Giants have a lot invested in Evan Neal. They want to take one more shot at making it work. I just wonder how long the leash is. I wonder what the bar is going to be, for Evan Neal to have to cross to succeed, or to fall under, in order for the Giants to reshuffle the offensive line. Another thing that Brasillo mentioned was the desire for versatility on the offensive line, the desire for guys to be able to play multiple positions. And that sort of rings an alarm bell with Giants fans after last year, when the offensive line was so unsettled, when guys were moving around, when there were points in practice during training camp last year where guys were shuffling positions every 2 snaps. And, that got to the point of absurdity, and it left the Giants in a situation where They did not settle their offensive line, their starting five on the offensive line, until they began practicing for their week 1 game against the Dallas Cowboys at the end of the preseason. And it also left the Giants in a position where, even with all of their moving around, even with all of their attempts to create versatility, they ended up in a situation where, when Andrew Thomas got hurt in week 1, they ended up with Josh Ezeudu playing left tackle, and that didn't go well. And I think a big part of the reason it didn't go well is that Josh Ezeudu never practiced at left tackle in the spring. He never practiced at left tackle in the summer. He competed with Ben Bredesen and with Mark Glowinski for a job as a starting guard, a job that he did not win. So he never practiced out at left tackle until the Giants began their regular season practices, which were obviously lighter practices, no pads. Um, so Ezeudu never had an opportunity to really prepare to play offensive tackle. And one of the things that we've noticed, perhaps not everyone on the offensive line is moving around. Jermaine Illuminor has been staying at left guard. John Runyon has been staying at right guard. Josh Ezeudu appears to be being prepared by Brasillo and the Giants to be that sort of multi-position super sub. So far, this spring, we have seen Ezeudu line up at left tackle in place of Andrew Thomas when Thomas wasn't working. This past week, when Thomas was back on the field, we saw Ezeudu line up at right tackle. We've seen Ezeudu take some snaps inside at the guard spots in OTAs. So Ezeudu is being prepared to play all of those positions, which, despite the fact that we know it didn't go well for him last year at left tackle, if somehow he has to play left tackle in 2024 for any amount of time, for a short period of time, for an extended period of time, the fact that he's being prepared to play spots across the line probably gives Ezeudu a better opportunity to succeed if he has to be thrown in an emergency at any of those positions. And that's a good thing. You don't necessarily need to prepare every single player to play every position, but you need some of your guys to be versatile enough to do that. Jermaine Illuminor is a guy who's played every position except center throughout his career. He's done well enough at left tackle when he's been asked to play there. He's been good at right tackle. He's played both guards. Josh Ezeudu has the capability to play all across the line. I think both guards and right tackle probably being the better spots for him, but perhaps with proper preparation, he could be acceptable at left tackle for a short period of time. And I'm glad to see Ezeudu getting work all across the line as the Giants work their way through OTAs. All right, Giants fans, that's the show for today. Thank you, as always, for listening. Please stay safe out there. Take care of each other, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.